Jeffrey here, speaking to you from home. I'm one of the many people around the world that aren't at work or cannot go to work. Those of you that know me know that I work in human resources, specifically within the cruise line industry. I work for one of the world's leading cruise lines, but as I said, I'm under isolation at home during the global pandemic. What I wanted to share with you today, I thought it would be fun to, well, not an earthquake, I just hit my camera, no need to worry. I think we all need a little bit of laughter in our lives, so I thought today what I would do is share with you the top funny, curious, sometimes strange questions that I've received from guests while working on board a cruise ship. Now, I work in human resources, so that's, behind the scenes. My role is not to interact with the guests, but I do anyway. As part of my day-to-day duties on board, there are certain functions that I have to go to, and there is an expectation that I do be in certain areas of the ships at certain times and, again, interact with the guests. And at the end of the day, I'm an officer just like anyone else, and I wear a uniform, and the guests don't know the difference, whether I'm an engineer, a navigational officer, a hotel officer, or in my case, a human resources officer. So I came up with the top 18 questions that have caused me to chuckle over the years that I've been asked by cruise ship guests. So here we go. Question number 1. Do the crew sleep on board? So I try to answer this in a funny kind of way. I'll usually follow up by saying, oh my gosh, no, of course not. Every night around midnight, we tender on little boats, the crew, to shore, to one of the islands, and we put them up in a hotel, and then we bring them back before sunrise the next day. Or sometimes I'll joke and say, oh no, of course they don't sleep on board. You may notice sometimes at night the helicopter sounds, so that's the helicopters taking the crew to shore, and then of course they do the same thing and bring them back before sunrise the next morning. I always make sure to clarify and state that yes, there is a huge portion of the ship that the guests never get to see, and that is where the crew live and sleep. So yes, the crew do sleep on board. Question number 2. Do the crew have to catch their own food? So the way I try to answer this, again with a little bit of humor, is usually say, well, if you mean to catch food, that means they take the serving spoon and the crew mess and they have to chase the food in the serving trays and then put it on their plates. Yes, the crew do have to catch their own food. Question number 3. What would happen if I flushed the toilet while I was sitting on it? So for those of you that don't know, cruise ship plumbing systems, specifically the toilet systems, are actually quite complicated. They're very, very similar or close to the toilets you find on modern aircraft in the lavatories. It's a vacuum type system with very, very little water through it, and it makes a loud noise and the vacuum sound and everything else, so there is a lot of suction. So actually I get this question a lot. My answer is usually, are you considering trying? Or, I don't recommend it. We're still looking for the last guest that tried. But again, if I tell a joke, I always make sure they know I was kidding. But still, I've never tried it, and I've been living on ships for almost 6 years. Question number 4. Is the water in the toilets fresh water or salt water? My reply is usually, I'm not sure. Are you going to try? If you do, let me know. Question number 5. How do I use the weird microwave in my stateroom? So, I can't speak for all cruise lines, but certainly the ones that I have worked with, there are no microwaves in the guest staterooms or the cabins. So I'm always puzzled when I get this question. There are none of these in guest staterooms. In fact, we prefer there not to be perishable food in any staterooms or cabins on board, just for public health. So I usually 99% of the time know exactly what the guest is talking about. And my follow-up is just asking, the microwave that you found, is it in the wardrobe or the closet in your stateroom? And of course they say yes, and I say, sorry, that's not a microwave, that's the safe. Question number 6. This is a question I've had from a guest more than once, more of a complaint actually. And they've said, I booked and paid for an ocean view stateroom. Why are we facing the parking lot? Moving on. Great thing about cruising is that every day or every other day, multiple times throughout the voyage, you get to different ports of call, you get to see different sites. Your resort or your vacation moves to different places, different geography with you. So you get to go on some cool excursions and explore all sorts of different areas around the world. So shore excursions are extremely popular, and I've been on many and loved all of them. A question I've had also more than once, question number 7. I went on a tour in the port of call, but I was disappointed with the ruins. They're in really bad shape. Moving on. For all you Titanic fans out there, question number 9. Has this ship ever sunk? No, it has not. Yet. Question number 10. Have you ever survived a ship sinking? So I usually follow up with something humorous as well to this question. I have been asked this question probably about a dozen times, and my answer is usually, well, since I'm standing here, if I had been on a ship that sank, I survived. Question number 11. How will I know which pictures in the photo gallery are mine? Unless you've never been on a cruise before, there are ship's photographers that are out and about throughout the day and often on the piers in the ports of call, snapping photos of the guests with either backdrops or natural escapes. On older ships or more traditional ships, they'll actually print all the photos and display them in the evenings in the photo gallery on board. So, how do you know which pictures are yours? Look for your face. Do you not know what you look like? Luckily, for all of us and all of them, the newer ships have great technology in their photo labs and in the photo galleries on board. What they're doing now is moving to digital, which is fantastic. I'm a bit of an environmentalist, so I don't like to see any wastage. So with these new photo labs that are on Royal Caribbean and Carnival and some of the major cruise lines out there, you basically just scan your SeaPass card or enter some of your personal information, and any of the photos of you that were taken pop right up digitally. You can print what you want in different sizes, basically made to order. So that's a lot better, and you don't have to look for your mug. Question number 12, for all of you security or law enforcement folks out there, this is generally where that question comes from, those that work in those industries. Are there any guns on the ship? That's classified. Another law enforcement question, question number 13. Does the ship have a jail? Mm-hmm. Yep. A couple cells, actually. And there's generally only one way to see those. I don't recommend it. So all of my colleagues, especially officers that work on ships, can attest to this. They've all been asked this question. I probably get asked at least once, if not several times per cruise. As I'm meandering through guest areas on the ship, I will undoubtedly be stopped and asked this question. Wait, if you're here, who's driving the ship? Now, I like to have a lot of fun with this one. So I'll usually say something like, oh, that's what autopilot's for. Or I'll say, it's okay, Siri's got this one. Or for those non-Apple fans, I'll say, it's okay, hey Google, turn left 5 degrees. Or another thing I'll do, who's driving the ship? Oh, there's an app for that. Hold on, just need to adjust our course. Now, the navigational team on most ships consists of at least 20 people. So there's, even when the computers are driving, a human being's actually driving. So the great thing about cruising is that you get to experience different ports of call. Often, several countries in one cruise. A question I've had several times has been, and not just when we're cruising around the United States or the Caribbean, I've had this question in Europe quite a bit. Why don't the ports accept my American money? Don't they know American is real money? It's really inconvenient that they don't accept my American money in Greece or Italy. Question number 16. Can I take the toilet brush home with me that's in my stateroom? Honestly, this is true. I've been asked this question. For public health, you'll notice when you're on a ship, every single stateroom bathroom has its own dedicated toilet brush. They're not, like in hotels, for example, carried from room to room to room, one brush used by housekeeping for an entire floor or section. Each stateroom, even crew cabins, every single one has its own toilet brush. No, the toilet brush is not complimentary and not there for you to take home. IKEA, Costco, they're not that expensive. You can get one at home, and there are far more interesting souvenirs that you might want to get on board. I kid you not, I've had this question lots. Question number 17. Why does your cruise line always cruise in really rough waters? When I've been on the other cruise lines, they never are sailing through rough seas. What gives? That's unfortunate if a guest finds that one cruise line tends to have rougher conditions than others. The fact is, I don't have the phone number for Mother Nature or her email address, so I can't fix that for you. And unfortunately, sometimes weather is out of our control. We try to avoid bad weather at all costs, but we are at the whim of the sea most of the time. Sometimes I'll joke with this a little bit. Typically, if I know that guest, if they're someone I've met before and we have a rapport. But one of my jokes that I like to use sometimes is, oh, like, low-fare airlines generally fly through more turbulent air than legacy airlines, cruise lines are the same. So we're more of a budget, low-cost cruise line. So when we purchase our routes through the sea, we can only afford or budget for the more rough waters. We can't afford, or we're not paying the extra to sail through smoother seas. Again, it's humorous, and I always clarify right after that. No, I'm kidding. Sorry that we're having a rough weather day. Do you want me to find out the forecast for the next day or two? So a common question I get, even though it's on my name tag, what I do on board, is, guests are always curious when they see a person in uniform, especially an officer. They want to know specifically what that person does. So I'll be standing in the line or near a coffee shop or something, or just waiting somewhere on the ship, or at the pier, and I'll be asked, "Oh, you're the HR guy, so you do all the hiring and firing." Those of you watching that work in human resources, whether it's on ships or land or anywhere, you know what I'm feeling. You've had this question too. And you're thinking, there's so much more that I do than that. In fact, that makes up this much of what I do. Alas, I get that a lot. So I said there were 18 questions. I told a little bit of a lie. I have 2 bonus questions for you. Bonus question number 19. Where does the ship's electricity come from? Well, actually, the ship has a gigantic cable that we tow behind us, which is why our route has to go in only one direction, because we don't want to run over our own cable. No. In case you actually wanted to know, the ship generates its own electricity when we're at sea. That can be done, depending on the ship and the ship's design, through its diesel generators that provide electricity, propulsion, and power, basically all the systems on board. Some ships, some of the ones I've worked on, have diesel generators, but also have gas turbines, which are jet engines, the same ones you would find on an airplane. They're fantastic because they're extremely light, they're fantastic at producing electricity, and they're more environmentally friendly. The downside is they do go through more fuel and require a different type of fuel than what we use for the main engine or propulsion systems on board. Some ships, a lot of the newer ones as well, employ solar technology. If you see a top-down, for example, of the Oasis class ships from Royal Caribbean International, around where you see the smokestacks towards the aft end of the ship, you can see the black panels that are on, it's actually just above deck 18, a solar system, which is fantastic and environmentally friendly. And finally, the last bonus question, question number 20. Are the ship's doctors real doctors? Well, my answer to that is, I hope you never have to find out.